They wanted a asynchronous educational experience, kind of on demand.
Hi, my name is Karina McCosco from Academic Influence, and I'm here with Joe, and we are looking into online programs. So if you could just start by telling us how your program got started, what were kind of the goals and the vision when your program was started.
Sure. So our program was started, the proposal, I should say, was written in 2015 when I joined Morgan State for the online MBA program. We already had a approved online program in project management, but I was tasked with writing the proposal to launch the online program, and it really was because um, for business school delivery, for educational delivery, you need a couple of different modalities. And our program was an evening only program, and it was a face-to-face only program. And so that only gave us one modality. And so for competitive reasons, we needed a second delivery platform. And so most business schools, for example, have a full-time daytime program. That's what I did when I got my MBA. They'll have an evening or part-time program. They'll have an online program, and they'll have an executive program. Think of the kind of four legs to a table. We're not going to make the investment for a full-time program, daytime, and the executive program is still a long ways off. But the online program could provide us with that critical second leg for reaching a market who was interested in the MBA program, but was unable or unwilling to travel to campus. They wanted a asynchronous educational experience, kind of on demand. So those are really some of the kind of the brief history and rationale behind how we got our program started.
Wow, that's great. And so for the school, for Morgan, it was for a competitive advantage, but obviously it's been beneficial to a lot of the students who have also gone through the online program. So what kind of type of person do you think would benefit the most for this program and thrive the most at online versus in person?
I think there are a couple of things. One is the person has to be more disciplined, because nobody is checking on you, especially in an asynchronous program. Now, some of our classes are synchronous. So we did, again, with the pandemic, we introduced what we call remote instruction, which is just a synchronous class. And so that was coupled with asynchronous learning. But a person simply has to be more disciplined to be able to go in, complete and do the assignments. They have to be a little bit more self-motivated. Again, there's nobody coming and telling you to come to class or to doing that sort of thing. They have to be comfortable, kind of working at their own pace. I think those are some of the things that are key. And then there's also an aspect of engagement. So we try to be throughout the rest of the other aspects of the program as engaged with the student as we can, professional development, career, other types of programming. But a student really has to be self-motivated, simply because, pre-pandemic, they literally weren't here. They weren't able to come into the office. The communications, we set up town halls for the online students, and we're always available to them, but it's just, that they have to be a little more self-directed, self-motivated. The students have tended to be a little bit older, a couple years older than some of our traditional students. Not all of them, but they've kind of skewed that way where you have more older students, coming into the online program, and they tend to be a little more directed in terms of the MBA is for a more specific purpose. So I'm, working and I need to get the MBA to move up the ladder, or there are promotional opportunities, and the MBA would be very helpful. So they tend to be a little more directed than our traditional face-to-face students.
Wow, that is interesting. And with that engagement part, obviously coming out of the pandemic, all of your MBA classes, not just the online ones, were moved online. And so what do you think, first of all, the difference was between the one that was traditionally supposed to be in person and the other one? And also, with that degree, how do you think employers look at an online degree versus getting it in person? Do you think there are distinctions, or do you think most of the time they view the in-person and online degree fairly similarly?
I'll take your second part first.
Okay.
We haven't noticed any difference with employers. I think, to be frank, prior to some of your um, bigger and some of your more name brand schools introducing an online MBA, it was the province of, your DeSales and your Phoenixes, who were, for-profit institutions. So it may have been looked upon, or looked down upon. I think, and it's not to say anything about the quality of the education, but I think once some of your larger name brand schools entered the online space, then I think it kind of gave the online MBA itself credibility. And then I think it was simply a matter of how innovative or differentiating did you make your own curriculum. I think from the standpoint of engagement, we had several students who came to campus to be in a face-to-face program who graduated 100% in an online environment because of when they came in due to the rise of the pandemic. We worked harder as an office to drive more engagement, drive more groups of students together. The students came into the program and formed, WhatsApp chat groups as first students so that there was a way for them to communicate with each other, irrespective of whatever was going on in the classes or coming out of our office. We had, like I said before, many more town hall and other events to keep students engaged. And they were intentional. We're going to be keeping some of those going. Some of those may transition now to face to face. Interestingly enough, we came back to be face to face in the fall, and then the day of classes, the decision was made at the provost level or somewhere in that office to keep our classes all virtual. So we did not come back live until the spring this semester, and even coming back live, several classes which were supposed to be in person, students actually voted to make them remote. And so, that's been a somewhat of a course of consternation, because we've had some students who have made significant efforts to travel to the U.S. to attend classes in person, and unfortunately, some of those classes have gone virtual. So imagine traveling from Sri Lanka or from Africa or from the Middle East, Latin America to get here, given all that's going on with COVID, and you're taking 2 out of your 3 classes from a dorm or from an apartment, someplace in Maryland. So that's been problematic, I think, for some, but we've, like I said, worked hard to kind of drive the engagement, and to keep driving the engagement with students, particularly around classes, and then particularly also around the career. We haven't seen falling off of engagement with students or employers hiring or students getting, really great job offers coming out of that online experience. So we've worked hard and been intentional to keep the experience as kind of status quo as we could.
Wow, yeah, and obviously the pandemic has been difficult for a lot of people, including, especially schools, but I think having that online program already established has probably helped to make that transition a little easier. And so just finishing out our interview, this is kind of more specific to Morgan. And so as an HBCU, obviously there's a lot of draws when you're choosing a college if you're going in person. But what do you think is the main difference or the main benefit of going to Morgan for the online program and HBCU compared to maybe a different school for an online program?
I think and we get a lot of students who will tell us that they went to a PWI, a predominantly white institution, for undergrad, and they wanted a quote unquote HBCU experience for graduate school. And those are the students that are coming in person,
Mm-hmm.
who want to be on the campus, want to be on an HBCU campus, and want to, have all that entails in terms of the classes. It really is not. It's not really the content. It's really more the who's in your class. Maybe you were, one of two, black or minority students in your classes in college, and now, you're one of you're in the majority in terms of your classes. And other cultural things that the school does, that you wouldn't necessarily find if you were at another institution. So those folks that are coming, and there's several I know because people will tell us they're coming for that, but those are the in-person students. You're not going to get um, any of that flavor, so to speak, in an online setting. You're just not going to get that because you're sitting wherever you are virtually, whether you're in Baltimore or you're in Sri Lanka taking classes. So we found that that's been pretty much exclusively people who've explicitly stated, I want an HBCU experience. Those have been the people that have been in person. So again, if you came for that in person and camp to come during the pandemic, then you got very little of that until recently this fall when the campus has started to loosen up and
Right.
have engagements. This past a few weeks ago, we hosted the CIAA, that's the big college conference. We hosted the tournaments here in Baltimore, and that was a massive draw for people to come. So a lot of our graduate students actually went because that was a big thing to kind of partake of. So that was fun. But again, if you wanted that experience and you were really coming in person, as opposed to being an online student.
Wow, well, thank you so much. It's really interesting to hear and we've talked to a lot of university professors, but you are one of the first for our online program. So it's really interesting to kind of compare that experience. And like you said, I think a lot of it has to do with the individual students' needs and what they're looking for in their program. So I hope this helps people when they're trying to determine to go online or to go in person. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.